Hi, welcome to Bruce's Garage. I'm Bruce and this is my garage. I've got a new towel today, the Quivr, not a beach towel towel. We're gonna see how it stacks up against the competition. I've got a whole bunch of towels behind me that we're gonna just go over and try along with the Quivr towel. So come on in and let's have some fun. So as we take a look at all these different drying towels behind me, I started thinking about things like what really makes a difference in these drying towels? Like what sets them apart from one another? Well, there's a number of factors. The first one I would say is the weave of the towel. So for example, is it a twist loop? Is it a twist? Is it a short nap or a longer nap? So that fiber and how it's woven makes a difference. So we're going to talk about that as we look at each of these towels and test them out. Of course, you have the grams per square meter, essentially the universal measure that everybody's using to say how much does this towel weigh essentially per square meter. So the heavier that towel is, or the more weave, or the bigger it is, the size really doesn't matter, obviously, because it's per square meter. But how thick that weave is, how thick the towel is, adds to the weight and, in theory, absorbability. But there's correlation there. I'm not sure that they're actually completely the same thing, meaning that if I have a higher GSM, does that automatically mean I'm going to get more drying power? Probably, but I don't know if we can guarantee that or not. We're going to try that out because I think there's some other factors, such as the mix of the fabric. So what percentage is polyamide versus polyester? Remember, polyamide is more that premium that allows the fabric to absorb more water and makes it a bit slicker on the surface as you're dragging your towel across the vehicle to dry. So generally, the higher the percentage of polyamide, say 30% versus 10% or 20%, is generally considered better. But is it? Because some of the towels that we had back here are at a 70-30 mix, some are 75-25, some are 80-20. So we're going to see if we can even tell a difference or not, because you will pay more as the percentage of polyamide goes up. So we're going to see if that really makes a difference. And then, of course, we have size, right? So some people like smaller drying towels, others like really big towels. Doesn't matter. I think it's a lot of personal preference. But of course, the larger the towel, the heavier the towel gets when you have water in it and the risk of dropping it or having it drag on the ground. So the size does matter to the individual user of the towel and a preference. I'm not even sure what my preference is, but I've got a bunch of different sizes. So as we're drying across this vehicle, we'll kind of get a feel for that. And then of course you have things like the cosmetic appearance of the towel. Doesn't matter technically by any means. But as you can see with the Quivr, not a beach towel, I will tell you that Josh went for a different cosmetic appearance, having a striped towel. You don't see many of those. Looks like a beach towel. The colors are different. I give him some credit for that, honestly, because I think it sets it apart from the competition. Doesn't make it a better drying towel. No way. That's got nothing to do with it. But honestly, it was some appeal that I had because I like the very short nap, which this is. So that was appealing to me. And the fact that he did something different by making it look like a beach towel, striping it, the colors, attracted me enough to say, I'm going to try that towel, and I bought it. And all these towels I bought myself, so none of this is sponsored. And the last factor, the all-important factor, I suppose, cost, right? So how much does the towel cost? And as I mentioned before, as the polyamide mix goes up, as the size goes up, as the GSM goes up, cost goes up, I think anyway. So we're going to try to level the playing field, at least by looking at cost per square inch, just as another way to kind of gauge that one factor. All right, enough of the BS. Let's get started here. So my car is ceramic coated. Want to make sure that you're clear on that. So again, you can see a lot of water droplets. We're going to do the Quivr towel first, just because I've been super excited to try this out. So I want to just try it out. I'm just going to drag that across the surface. Yeah, you know, this towel, so again, not a ton of water on here, but seems to dry pretty darn well. I will say that the weight, because it's not as heavy, you know, it's not catching some of these ridges in the hood. Not a big deal, but, you know, I hadn't really thought about that in terms of the weight of the towel, and that affects maybe your throw or how it drags on the surface. And some of that drag can actually be positive. But overall, it dries really well. You know, I'd have to dry the whole vehicle, and I may do that to give this one a try. Doesn't feel very wet. Of course, at this point, it's not very heavy. This is a real short fiber, which I like. Josh mentioned on his video that he did this deliberately because the longer twist loops sometimes snag, and I've got some of my towels that have snags in them, and they can get caught on emblems on the vehicles, and that could rip the emblem off. Doesn't happen very often, but it can. Honestly, I like the real short fiber twist, that twist fiber. I really like that because my favorite today, I will tell you, is the DIY drying blanket. And it's a very similar fabric to this. This is an 80-20 blend. So this is 20% polyamide. That is one of the stats that really kind of surprised me, because I thought, well, if the premium microfibers are 70-30, I wonder why he went with 80-20. But also, does it matter? And I don't know the answer to that. At least in real life, does it really matter? We're going to find out. Again, at least so far, I would say it dries just fine. It is a little lightweight early on of using it without having it be really wet, so it didn't kind of fit into some of the curves on the hood. Let's get another towel in progress here and try it out. And give out my favorite here, the DIY detail drying blanket. Now, it didn't catch some of these corners either, and I think it is a little bit heavier towel. I notice it's not drying as well, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, I would definitely say the DIY detail is not drying as well. Which kind of surprises me. Now, I wonder if some of that could be related to the fact that this is a bit older towel. And I wonder if it's got, you know, I don't always use a drying aid, but occasionally I do. And when I do, I have used Amplify from Armor Detail, which has some protection in it. So that can make your towels a bit hydrophobic and not as absorbent if you don't wash them right away. So maybe that's a factor, because I'm still seeing some water on here. It's definitely, you know, not drying as much. I love the size of the DIY drying blanket, and I love the size of the Quivr. I will tell you, I think those sizes are pretty good. All right, let's give the goat from the House of Rags a try. So it throws real nice because of its weight. And it also missed this little corner here, so that's probably a non-issue if the goat missed it, as big and heavy as it is. And it also is leaving a little bit of water. Can definitely feel the water on this towel. It definitely absorbs. It can absorb a lot. Again, being the heaviest of all the towels. So, given the fact that it's so thick, one of the challenges with this type of towel is that when it absorbs, it starts to get a lot heavier, and that can be fatiguing, especially if you're drying a large vehicle. You have to fold it up as you're getting on lower panels. Not the end of the world, but just factors to consider. All right, that's the GOAT. Next up, we're going to try the Rag Company's new M22 Liquidator. It's green. It's a very similar, I would tell you, it feels like the GOAT, just smaller. Okay, M22 Liquidator. Interestingly, early on, I can tell you it did get this dry on this curve on the hood. Maybe because it's a bit smaller. It's drying really well. I would tell you it's probably drying the best of them so far. Yeah. Now, I will tell you also, one of the things I really like about this, when I'm really low on the vehicle, I like the fact that this size is small enough that I'm not having to like ball it all up or fold it a bunch so I don't drag it on the ground. That's kind of an advantage of this. Now, whether I could dry this whole vehicle with this, I suspect I could. Honestly, given the way it just dried, in its size, I might almost say even if it didn't, then fine. I'll buy another one and use 2 towels to dry my vehicle. Yeah, this Liquidator M22, very nice. Very nice. Done really a great job so far. All right, sister to the GOAT towel from Thor, this is Diva. So it's a nice big towel, and it's a longer nap twist loop. Not quite as long, I don't think, as the GOAT. Suede border, but it's big. So we'll see how this one works too. Yeah, I think the Diva's drying pretty nice. That nice size of this actually works great for this hood because I can get a complete throw. Downside to the Diva, of course, is that if you're going to go low on this vehicle, you're going to have to hold the towel up so it doesn't drag, or maybe even fold it over. I do have a couple snags in here already. This isn't that old. Again, not an uncommon thing with these twist loops to get the snags. You can trim them off. It's not the end of the world, but it's just a factor to consider. Next up on our list is the Gauntlet. So this is a unique towel from the Rag Company. And it's unique because it's got a mix of a couple different weaves. So it does have the twist loop, which is not as long, but then it's got a fluffy rose going all the way down, and you can see kind of the pattern, light gray, dark gray, same on both sides, just a color difference. Does have a nice soft border edge. So it looked like it did leave some moisture at the top of the hood here. Very easy. This is a fairly lightweight, lower GSM towel. Seems to be drying fairly well. Throws nice, good size. Dried pretty good here. Definitely easy to handle because it doesn't feel nearly as heavy. Do have to hold it when you're getting on these lower panels to make sure you're not dragging it on the ground. This is also a brand new towel I just got. This is Auto Fiber's Dreadnought. It's not huge, so it's a fairly small towel. Feels fairly lightweight. Dreadnought, by the way, is 75-25 mix, so it's a little bit different than some of our other towels. So it's a little lighter weight. Definitely can feel that when I'm dragging, but it dried the curves there without any problem. Wow, it's drying really well. Yeah, I like the Dreadnought. I like the size. I think I mean, I only done the hood here in this front, and I can certainly feel the moisture. I don't know if it would do the whole vehicle or not. All right, this is an original liquidator from the Rag Company. So it's not the M22 because it's much bigger. Twist loop. Again, you can see the size of this. This is a much older towel. I've had this one for a while. I've got a few snags in it. We're going to give this a shot. This is the last towel to try. All right, you can see that, it didn't quite dry as well. It's a fairly lightweight towel, but as I mentioned, it's also one of my oldest towels. So it absolutely could have, yeah, see how it's not drying well at all. This towel definitely could have some hydrophobics in it from just being used a whole lot. If I used it with Amplify as a drying aid, and it's just got some of that protection in the towel. So I don't want to knock it. Certainly when I come up to it and I put a little bit of pressure on, seems like it's drying fine. Could also be the GSM. We'll have to look at the stats on that. But being an older towel, I think we just have to take that into consideration. All right, let's get back to the Quivr. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about what your favorite drying towel is, which one that you like to use and why, and which one you thought that maybe worked the best in this situation. Now, let's talk about the Quivr. So what do I like about the Quivr? I'll tell you, I really like the style. I know, don't discount it. I'm just telling you, and I'm being honest, that's one of the things I really like about it. I like the micro loop, that it's very short nap, which I really do like. And I'm finding that I like those towels better. I think they're still pretty darn absorbent, but the fact that they don't snag, and I think it might help with weight as well. You have less fiber there, less fabric. I really like it. I think I like this towel. Let's look at some of the stats. It's 31 by 28. Now, the one thing that did surprise me was the 80-20 mix. I don't know if that impacted drying. I think I'm going to have to play with this towel a little bit more and do a complete wash on the vehicle and dry it. Now, let's look at the DIY detail, because it's also, by the way, an 80-20 mix. So I told you that was my favorite towel. So given that, I would say it probably doesn't matter, because I always felt like the DIY detail drying blanket dried better than any other towel I had. And I remember that the first time I used it, I was like, wow, this towel dries better than anything. So my conclusion on whether it's 70-30 or 80-20 for these drying towels, I wouldn't worry about it. Convinced myself of that one real quick. Now let's go back to the DIY detail drying blanket and Quivr. So the drying blanket is a 1200 GSM towel, and the Quivr is 1080 GSM. Again, not much difference there. Honestly, let's see on size. Quivr's a little bit, well, they're almost the same. Quivr's a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit easier to manage. But overall, again, I would tell you, I'm pretty pleased with the Quivr. I think it is a decent towel to use. All right, so we're back. I've looked at all the videos so I could recall everything. I've got some notes here. And I want to give you just really my impression. So Quivr towel, the beach towel that's not a beach towel, I really like the towel. I think it's a decent towel. I think it's a pretty decent price. It's 31 by 28 in size. It's short twist loop, $29.99. So it works out to about 3.5 cents per square inch, which is the third lowest cost of all the towels we played with today. It's an 80-20 mix, so I was a little surprised about that, versus 70-30. I don't know if that made a difference or not. Again, I mentioned I really like the DIY drying blanket, and interestingly, that's also 80-20, and that was always my favorite towel and always dried really well. So I don't know that 70-30, 80-20 is a huge difference based on what we experienced today, but it's a factor for you to think about when you're selecting a towel. It is made in South Korea. I think it's really a decent size too. It was really smooth on the surface, easy to work with. I like the lighter weight, but also that's a downside in that, the throw, sometimes, that little bit of extra weight can help absorb some of that water across the surface. So overall, I would say the Quivr was really a good towel. Should you run out and buy it? I think, Josh even said this himself. If you have a towel that you really like, don't worry about it. Keep using it. But if you want to explore a different towel, I give it an A+ for style. I will tell you that. So I think that's certainly something distinctive, and I applaud him for coming up with something that is distinct. I think it's a really good towel overall. Would I run out and buy a whole bunch and use no other towel? No, but I don't know that there's any towel that I would say that with. So overall, Quivr, not a beach towel, really solid towel. I don't think you have any concerns about that towel. I do like the short loop better than the longer loop. But if I had to pick my favorites just on the sample we did today, I would tell you that I would pick two towels, one of the larger ones and one of the smaller ones. And the larger one I would pick would be the Diva. And I like the Thor Diva because it's not as heavy as the Goat, but it was very absorbent. It dragged across the surface really well. And I would pick the Rag Company Liquidator M22. I like that towel because it is thick like the Goat towel, but it's smaller. So the Goat seems to me that, it's a bit heavy and unwieldy to manage generally. So the fact that the Liquidator M22 is, again, a heavy towel in terms of its GSM, it actually came in at, the Liquidator is 2200 GSM, the Goat is 2300 GSM, so they're about the same, but the Liquidator M22 is so much smaller, so it's a lot more manageable to handle, but not, maybe as practical for large flat drying surfaces. So that's why I kind of land on these two different, very, very different towels between the Diva and the M22, but I really do like them. They're both twist loop. I think they both really did well. The M22 dried super well. I will point out a couple things here though. So the M22 is a higher cost towel. So that towel even though it's pretty small at 20 by 20, is $22. But your cost per square inch is much higher. It's one of the higher cost towels given its size. So it's 5.5 cents per square inch. When you think about the Diva is 2.7 cents per square inch. So you can see there is a difference, even though the Diva costs $27.99. It's a much larger towel. But when you normalize them based upon size, you can see that there's a difference. And I've got a chart here to show you just so you can see those differences. And so again, cost is a factor. You decide how you want to prioritize that. I hope it's been helpful. I'd appreciate the thumbs up, appreciate the subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I'm grateful for you watching my videos. I really do appreciate it. And remember, the most important thing, just go in your garage and have fun detailing. Have a great day.